Hello, grammarians, welcome back. Today we are going to talk about using commas. We are going to see and learn how to use commas in English writing. So let's start. Before we proceed, we need to know what a comma is. A comma is a punctuation mark used within a sentence. You must have seen commas in your English reading book or in your grammar book or in your vocabulary book. So how do you know when to use a comma? Okay, now tell me some of the punctuation marks you know about. Very good. Period, question mark, exclamation mark. Super. Let's look at the sentence. I love eating dogs and turtles. This sentence doesn't seem right, does it? People don't eat dogs and turtles. How can we make it better? Let's try adding commas to the sentence. Here it is. Okay, after adding commas, the sentence is read like this. I love eating dogs and turtles. So basically, it's not talking about eating dogs and turtles. It's talking about a person who is listing things he likes or she likes. So you see how comma helps us to make the meaning of a sentence clear? The previous example must have given you an idea of how important commas are in our sentences. Adding commas makes the sentences easier to read and understand. It also tells when or where to pause. Some of the basic comma rules are listed below. Let's read and understand them. Rule number 1. Use a comma between a city and state. Also, use one after the state if the sentence continues. How is a comma used in addresses? First of all, let us understand what an address is. Can anybody tell me what an address is? Okay. An address is where someone lives. It has person's name, the street address, the city, the state, or country. Commas go after each part of the address when writing in a sentence. Example, Mark Angel, 501 Greenwood Avenue, Miami, Florida. So you see here, we have a comma after Mark Angel, which is the name of the person, 501 Greenwood Avenue, which is the street address, Miami, that is the name of the city, and Florida, which is the name of the state. So a comma comes after each part of the address. Let us look at a few examples to understand the usage of comma better in addresses. Example 1. Sandra was from St. Louis, Missouri. In this sentence, we use a comma to separate St. Louis, which is a city, and the state, which is Missouri. Example 2. She also lived in 15 Main Street, Paris, France, for a few years. In this sentence, we use a comma between 15 Main Street and Paris, which is a street name and the city's name. We again use a comma after Paris to separate the city from the country. And again after France. because the sentence is being continued. Example 3. Her address was 15 Main Street, St. Louis, Missouri. Here, we use a comma between 15 Main Street and St. Louis to separate the street and the city. Again, we use a comma to separate St. Louis and Missouri, which is a city and a state. St. Louis is a city and Missouri is a state. When addressing an envelope, each piece of address goes on a different line. For example, Mr. Mr. John Doe, 4 Hall Street, Seattle, Washington 80915. Mr. John Doe is the person's name. 4 Hall Street is the street's name. Seattle is the city's name, and Washington is the state's name. The city and the state come in one line, but separated by a comma. Remember, commas are used to separate the name of street, city, state, or country. Rule number 2. Use a comma to separate the day of the month from the year. Also, use one after the year if the sentence continues. Let's look at some examples. Commas and dates. Let us look at the two sentences. I was born on April 22, 2018. On Tuesday, June 14, 2018, we had a terrible snowstorm. And the first one, the sentence ends after the year. So we put a comma between the date and the year. However, in the second sentence, we put a comma between the day, date, and the year, and even after the year, because the sentence continues after the year. Now, why do we need to use commas and dates? Look at the first example. If you don't put a comma here, it would be like April 22, 2018. People would get mixed up with numbers. That's why it's very important to use commas and dates. Rule number 3. Use commas after the greeting and closing in your letters. Let's look at the usage of comma in letters. Okay, you use a comma after the greeting, that is Dear Anna, comma, and then you write your letter, blah, 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 whatever. And then at the end, love, or whatever, your best friend. This is the closing, so you need to put a comma after the closing too. So love, comma, Krista. Rule number 4. Use commas to separate items in a list. This list can be a list of friends, a list of fruits, a list of vegetables, a list of animals, a list of things you like, any list. Let us look at some examples. Krista wrote letters to Anna, Paul, and Beth. Here, we are using a comma to separate Anna and Paul. We are even using a comma after Paul. Okay, we don't need to use a comma after and because we already have Anne here. Okay, let us look at the second example. My favorite colors are white, blue, and green. We have a comma to separate white and blue we have a comma to separate blue and green. We don't use a comma after and. Remember that because we have the word and. Okay, I want you to notice or point one thing here that some people choose not to use commas before and some people do. So if you do not see a comma before and, even that is considered correct. So in the first sentence, we have a list of people to whom Krista wrote letters. In the second one, we have a list of my favorite colors. That's all. So these aren't all the comma rules, but a few of them. Okay, I want you to use them or make sure you use them whenever you're writing. Okay, now let's practice. Let's do some exercises. Add commas in the right places. Okay, so let's start our exercise. Add commas in the right places. Okay, now I'll be reading out the sentences or the phrases. You need to add commas in the right places. Monday, September 30, 2017. Lee invited Jacob, Matthew, and Ellen. Dear Rosa, February 29, 1988. Thursday, March 2018. I'm going to give you 2 minutes. Add the commas, and then we'll check our answers. You need to add commas to this letter too. Dear Mom, love Lisa. Okay, here are the answers. I'm sure you've got them all correct. Excellent. I'm sure you must have put the commas in the right places. Super. You all are amazing students. I hope you understood our lesson for today. It's very important. You'll be using commas whenever you write English. So take a note of the rules and keep using them in your English writing to become super writer. See you next time. Till then, take care. Goodbye.